cable to our projector, because we can't get any of the laptops to get connected to the projector here, so unfortunately, we're going to have to do this manually. First of all, let's introduce ourselves. I think most people know each other, but maybe not everyone. Let's start off with you, Paul. Paul Rivers with 3M.
Tom Miller, Simplex Renal.
Chris Gander, Nardini Fire.
Dwayne Grace, self-employed code consultant.
Phil Walker, Futurall Fire Consultant Design.
Tom Nardini, Nardini Fire. Dave Bueller, Response Fire Protection.
Jim Campbell, Midwest Fire.
Carl Schubert, Nardini Fire.
Robert Sauter, Post Fire.
Ed Meyer, North Fire Design.
Paul Watercut, unemployed.
God, we'll all be pretty soon. This keeps up. Paul, did you have an announcement that you wanted to make tonight?
Well, I just,
The happenings at the SFP convention?
yeah, basically, I was at the SFPE. It was a technology conference, and they also had different classes and whatnot. Scott Futrell teaches at this, and a number of other people there from Minnesota were there. But I just recently got elected to the board of directors for SFPE. And so I attended the first meeting. I'm actually not officially on the board yet until January 1, but I just wanted to make briefly tell what's going on with SFPE National and just give you an update. So 5 minutes. Yeah, to do that if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. I may run out of juice here, but if you can see this. You can all see that. But basically, board members there's an insurance company, Swiss Re. We also have government entities, NIST, GSA, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and we also have some consultants here, Air Fire, RJA, Shermer, a lot of people you already know about that, Hughes Associates, Code Consultants, and so I thought, for a second there, you had me fooled. So, but also laboratories, UL and FM Global are on that, as well as 3 universities, University of Maryland, WPI, Lund, Sweden, and then a couple of associations, National Fire Sprinkler Association and NFPA, and then 2 industry entities, myself, and then Safeway. And then, but 4 of the 17 board of directors are from outside the United States, which is, it's growing outside the United States in particular. In fact, the immediate past president is Russ Fleming from NFSA, but the new one is from FM Global, Rich Davis, but the next one is going to be from Lund University out of the UK, out of Scotland. So it's really getting an international flavor to it. I see some of the vice presidents and whatnot, and there's 11 directors. I'll be one of those directors next fall.
Are these 1-year terms then?
2 year, and then there's actually 2 years to re-up for another 2 years at least. And then it's on an annual basis after that. So they have an annual technology conference, which is really a good program to see. A lot of things on fire sprinklers, a lot of alarms and detection things going on. And contract seminars, these are the things that SFP is really involved with, and something that we may want to consider here at some point in time is work with them to do a contract seminar on a particular topic or subject in Minnesota. So there's and they have already pre-made. So there's a biannual technical conference in Lund University in Sweden. So if you care to go to Sweden in 2010, did I say Scotland before I meant Sweden? Sorry. There's another one in Scotland, but it's in 2010. And they also do a lot of elementary and high school training aid. One thing they have is a CD. It's Chemistry of Fire CD, and that you can put take your high schools or middle schools just to talk about the chemistry of fire. So it's something that was done in conjunction with Discovery Education and Discovery Channel. So,
What is that?
pardon me?
CD last, how long was the duration?
The CD, well, I think it's not so much that it runs all the way through, it's kind of interactive and you take different parts of it. So, there's online training that you have continuing ed, so if you need continuing ed for your employment, you can do that. And, but also what they're doing is they're promoting fire protection engineering worldwide, and through the WPI and Worcester Polytechnic Institute here in the United States, as well as the University of Maryland, Moon University. Korea's got some things going on with one of their universities. Australia. They even have the SFPE chapter just started up in Shanghai, China. There's a number of them in Europe. There's one with actually Saudi Aramco has their own SFPE chapter, just the one company. So they're it's really truly getting all over the world. And but there's a number of, Cal Poly is looking to start up a new master's program in fire protection engineering. And a lot of other universities in the United States, UNLV, Eastern Kentucky University, are looking to, they do have fire protection coursework that they're doing. So, education, the need for fire protection engineers, there's a supply of 75 fire protection engineers that are graduated annually. This is for USA and people that are on the track for professional engineering. The demand is 80 required annually, just for Rolf Jensen Associates and Sherman.
They're not finding them up here.
So we don't have enough fire protection engineers coming out of, trained fire protection engineers coming out of the schools. The demand is up to 300 to 400 annually, perhaps more. So, so basically what they're doing is they're getting mechanical engineers, electrical, whoever, out of these other universities and doing on-the-job training to get them to do what they're needed. So there's a real need for trained fire protection engineers. And it's going to exacerbate itself because the next 10 to 15 years, the baby boomers, the ones that are baby boomers here, are going to be retiring. And so there's a mass exodus of, trained people out of the industry. So we got a real issue, and we're focusing on expanding programs. And one place actually we're targeting is the University of St. Thomas, because they've got a nice engineering program there. 300 engineers, all electrical and mechanical, and see if there's a way we can get them to start doing something.
Good article, training engineering.
Yeah, we're in a crisis situation with engineering. So, in terms of licensing, they also promote licensing in the United States. And establishing fire protection engineering as an engineering discipline. Right now, 48 states recognize fire protection engineering as a discipline. Alaska just is taking it on. Ironically, it's Alaska and Hawaii, the last two, the 4 states. So Alaska still has, or Hawaii still has it to do it, but Alaska is now considering recognizing fire protection engineering. And the other thing that SFPE does is they write and maintain a professional engineering exams, questions that are implemented by the National Council for Examiners of Engineering and Surveying, NCEES, and they, this is tested for the contiguous United States for now, but they are going to be moving into other parts of the world later. But the other thing about this is, just like NISA, and I can't remember, have we ever done the NISA writing exam questions for NISA?
I'm on that.
You're on that?
Yeah.
And that's something that we can do as a chapter, but we can also write exams for the PE exam as well, professional engineering exam. Because they need those things. Right now, they're in pretty good shape. They got a lot to, they always need to have chapters.
Finding people to write test questions on NISA is becoming a big problem.
Yeah, so NISA is one, and as well as the PE, they always need some people. So one other thing that's really interesting that's happening, and this may not happen until 2020, but it's already being talked about, is that it's going to be a requirement if you want to become a professional engineer. And it's going to be required that you have a BS plus 30, in other words, have a master's degree in the discipline that you're in, be it mechanical, be it for fire protection, whatever. So that's, my battery went out now, so, so that's okay, I was pretty much done anyway. But,
So you need someone that went from mechanical engineering to not get an FTE then?
well, yeah, you if you take the exam, you get your PE in fire protection engineering if you're trained to do it, so. And that's okay, if it's not, I really don't care where fire protection engineers come from, as long as they're trained and we got enough people to do that. You know, and it's much better if we have them going through the curriculum, fire theory, sprinkler design, special hazard design, construction, codes, requirements, fire dynamics, all the stuff that, a fire protection engineer really needs. So it'd be good to have that, but, second best is to get, engineers that can ultimately come and work in our companies, the respective companies that are trained. So, but anyway, that was just a very brief thing. I can send this to you, and you can just send it out to
Mail it out to the list.
yeah, mail out to the list.
Those
And I can
interested.
send it out, I can make it in PDF format and send it out.
Yep.
So there's a whole information on the number of members we have in SFPE, and actually, getting on the board here, I was very surprised at how active it really is, and how active it's getting. And they had the most people attending the conference ever. And we have some people here from this chapter that are heavily involved. In fact, Scott Futrell was elected fellow down there at this 2 weeks ago, so it was an honor to Scott. So we've had Doug Rivers, we've had, we had Mike O'Hara from here, I forget who else, if there's anybody else. Those three, so we've had 3 people here recently that have been elected fellow in the national chapter, so that's quite an honor for this group, so.
Oh, you're set to St. Thomas, the program?
Not so much so far, but that's basically because they look at it as like a lot of work, but what you need is somebody on the inside that's interested. That would be the sugar daddy, if you will, the one that's going to carry the water for you internally. And right now we don't have that yet. They're interested because they see the need. We haven't presented this latest data, which we're dying. Especially when one of the things that they have with all these engineers that go to WPI in Maryland, they're very eastern centric. So they're like homing pigeons that come out here and they work in the Midwest or work out east, and then they head right back home. That's not unusual. So we need people being educated in the Midwest that want to stay in the Midwest. We need people out west that will stay out west and service that. So, and that's kind of what we're looking at. So, I'm also happen to be on the board of fire safety advisors for WPI, and some of the same people that are on, like Carl Baldassara from Sherman, who's the president of Sherman. He's on that. He's helping getting things started at Cal Poly. Dr. Natariani from WPI has committed to come out with myself and also perhaps some of the other members that are here to go in and talk with the University of St. Thomas and to see if we can get something going, some sort of formal education. Even if you start off with an intro to fire protection undergrad class, they have it applied to mechanical or electrical. So it's something that we
Engineering building where they built up a booth.
Engineering building for University at UMD.
I know the first program they're going to start at civil, but what else is going to go with that? Yeah.
So, well, I'll tell you what, I don't want to take any more time from the speaker, the invited speaker, but I just want to give a little brief update on that. And maybe we can do something else here in another future.
Are you going to be around for it?
I should be done.
No, you will be? Okay.
Yes, I will be. So
I can call you.
yeah.
Okay, no
So
problem.
I'm in town. I just gone. So, anyway, a lot of good things going on with the national.
Thank you.
Okay. same way Zuiderveld.
Thank you very much. I see Phil is anxious to say a few words. Right? Representing.
Yeah, actually no good words, but I'll try and condense it to the good words here. Just real quick, Paul mentioned Scott Futrell. Scott's also a member of the Governor's Council on Fire Prevention and Control. He was unable to make it tonight, but he just wanted to let me convey you the high points of what the Governor's Council is going to be pursuing in the next, their year 2008-2009. They're going to be actively debating the management of next year's Governor's Fire Prevention Day at the fair. As you know, Dan Bernardi's kind of had-manned it in the past. Dan's now in the private sector, and he's still actively involved, but yet they're still, I guess, trying to get their hands around it as far as trying to make it bigger and better. And we know that every year, it has been a great event at the fair. It's the first Friday of the fair of each year, and we're going to continue to make it a success. So, and next thing, they're going to gather information on a large barn, such as turkey and hog fires in Minnesota. They've had some very expensive losses over the last few years. So it's always hard getting the database statewide because not all communities are able or willing to report these fires all the time or report them with accuracy. The state fire marshal does its best to try and come up with information, but by the time that the fire marshal's office gets there, especially on some of these other fires, the insurance companies have gotten there already. So another thing they're going to do is gather information, discuss the 1- and 2-family residential sprinkler coalition. One of the reasons that they're going to really go after this hard is that you've been out of town the last month or so regarding the code committee hearings in Minneapolis last month regarding the residential sprinkler legislation. It will become a real thing now. Once it's adopted in the international code, then it's up to individual states to adopt it. After that, I imagine there'll be a little bit of discussions and a fight about that, but they want to become proactive about it right now. As a matter of fact, I'm on the Minnesota Fire Protection Advisory Council Board. I'll get to that in a second. I'll talk about that for a second. Another thing that the Governor's Council is going to do is gather information, discuss the work by the fire protection and fire as well, and we go on our competency issues too, which I'll talk about for a quick minute. And then they're also working on their annual report. Their next meeting is on November 26th, and Scott said that he'll probably be hearing a full report on that meeting as far as the discussions on these agenda items here. Right now, Scott's actively participating in the Minnesota State Fire Chiefs Code Committee, and they're looking right now at the 2009 State Fire Code process and how that's going to work. Because our fire code is ever evolving, and the more times the technology changes, the more items that are going to have to be implemented or addressed in the codes.
So there is a cycle in 2009 that turns out to 2007, 13?
I don't know all the details on it as far as
How many years?
what the 2009 State Fire Code process is, if it's going to be for 2010 or for 2007. Right now we are under the 2007 Minnesota State Fire and Building Codes. That's
Right, which adopted 2002 MK.
No, 2006.
MK 13 is the other.
Are you talking about adopting 2007 NFPA 13? Is what you're talking about, in the 2010 code?
When would the opportunity be to get that into the fire code, the 2007?
I think the State Fire
Next year?
Marshal's office is going to have some input on that, because right now, the State Fire Marshal's office, they've had the opportunity to review plans to the 2007-13, but they've elected not to. They're
Right.
still going by 2002. Now, hopefully that will become part of the process and discussions with State Fire Marshal's involvement. I think you talked to John Nischa at State Fire Marshal's office for more information on that. Scott's more up, or John's more up on that than I am.
When they adopted the code, that was the code that was proposed to be used in 2002. And they can't change it midstream without going through the whole process again. That's why they have it.
Right.
And
It's a long time.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. It's like, creating fences, then a lot of loud screaming and hollering takes 2 years to produce results, but that's how it works. Regarding some of these Fire Protection Advisory Council items, one of the issues we're looking at is coming up with some rules and regulations for the installation of multi-purpose systems. In other words, combination plumbing and fire protection systems. Some people have known them as Wurzbo. Wurzbo was bought out by, was it Peck or, I can't remember the name of the other company. There's a couple companies out right now. Wurzbo is the one that used to have like the multi-ports, where like 7, 8 ports or whatever.
Anymore?
There's another, one that
Ultimate.
bought out by another company, but there's another company out that has it only to where there's like 3 ports and they're like
They have
tubes.
3/4 inch tube instead of half inch.
Yeah, right. So what's happening is that there's been concern about who's qualified to design and install those types of systems. And with the recent code committee that, it's going to be eventually, new residences are going to get sprinkled at some point in time. They want to start addressing that issue now. There's been a lot of discussion on it so far, especially that there are states right now that have different licensing requirement for residential installers compared to commercial installers. So if we don't come to agreement at the state level regarding who can design and install these types of systems, that's the other alternative look at, is having a whole separate entity for that. The only problem is with that is that you gotta fund it, you gotta police it. And that usually comes at the state level and sometimes the local level. And with money the way it is or isn't right now, that's gonna be a long, drawn-out process. But I got some information on e-newsletter from, this is of all places, Plumbing Engineer Magazine, because the plumbers are going to get into this, that they've got an article out that the residential fire sprinkler market potentially is going to exceed $3 billion annually a year once that market starts going. And if anybody's interested in any information on that, the residential fires, www.residentialfiresprinklers.com is where you can find that article, or just see me after the meeting. I can write it down for you.
What was that again?
www.residentialfiresprinklers.com.
Who's sponsoring that? The whole fire sprinkler
Yeah.
coalition?
Well, CFPS, and who else is trying to get their fingers and hands around this.
They've been saying that for 30 years, we're still waiting, so.
Well, yeah, they are. Right now, the state of Minnesota is trying to, again, establish a database as far as existing multi-purpose systems that have been installed so far. There haven't been a lot.
No, I mean, Wurzbo has been staying out of Minnesota, big time.
Yeah. But,
Intentionally.
yeah, but once, like I said, once the floodgates are open on this, maybe we'll shut the barn door after the horses are out, so we're going to try and address it early. We've already addressed the current fire sprinkler systems language that's going to be in the next session as far as the qualifications. It's being upgraded a little bit because the last language that was in the laws were more toward grandfathering in the process, because there were a lot of fitters out there that didn't necessarily have the documented training and education hours, especially, but now that they've let this thing run its course for a while, now that the rules are getting a little bit tighter on this right now regarding the number of education hours, number of training hours that are required to install fire sprinkler systems. So that's being updated right now. We meet the second Thursday of every month. The next meeting is November 13th. It's at the Oakdale Fire Station in Oakdale. The public's more than welcome to attend, and some have, and a few contractors have voiced their opinions too. It gets a little spirited at times, but it's everybody's got an opinion, everybody's entitled to it, and we want to hear it. So that's your chance if you've got some opinions on some of these items that we're looking at. Like I said, right now we're concentrating on multi-purpose potable water systems right now. We've already addressed items such as, like I said, licensing. We've addressed requirements regarding AHJ competency, revised language for managing employees. This is all done in the last 18 months here. New language for follow-up plan review fees. Fitter exam eligibility is another item. They're having problems documenting people who come from out of state as far as their education, training, sometimes the documentation has been a lot of handwritten documentation. They're trying to tighten that up, but they're trying to do it in a way that they're not, basically forbidding people to, have a right to work in the state. So they're, like I said, we have representatives from both, union and merit shop, on the advisory council, and trying to get everybody's input that's going to be fair to everyone. Well, it's not going to be fair to everyone. I'll tell you that right now. There are no rules or laws that are fair to everyone. There's always going to be somebody left out on it, but it's going to try to at least apply to most in the field. So that's, I said, if you want more of an update, you're more than welcome to come join us next month on November 13th.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. And because Robert and many of us here have been trying to get the projector going, but no luck. I will see if I can get that to a repair shop and see if somebody can figure out what's going on with it, probably the cable. In the meantime, seeing that you've been patiently waiting all day to get to this opportunity, this is A time, right? You get 10 minutes of A time. Anyway, take whatever time you need. With no further ado, Robert Zuiderveld, he's actually a Dutchman, like me, from the same country, although you came a lot later. I've been here longer than you. So I should say that I should be able to pronounce your last name properly.
I hope so.
Zuiderveld. There you go. You have the floor.
Excellent. Now, does everybody have a copy? Short introduction, Robert Zuiderveld, works for Power Bank Corporation. It's been active in North America for probably about 10, 15 years, mostly in the oil and gas industry. And late last year, decided to really introduce some of our other products into the U.S. market. The company specializes in the protection of industrial equipment used in explosion hazardous areas. So anything powered and mobile, we can either convert to comply with codes and regulations for use in those areas, or offer protection measures that will make them safer for use in those areas. Our explosion protection services are divided into 3 divisions. One is material handling, which covers also the material handling equipment used in facilities. Offshore, which is all the offshore equipment, compression units, hydrogen units, all that kind of stuff. And the third is consulting, which is a very big part of our business, educating people about forklift equipment, material handling equipment, and the hazards that they pose in facilities. When you get down to protection of powered industrial equipment, our main goal is to eliminate all ignition sources that can be found on industrial equipment. Pretty straightforward, depending on where the equipment is going to go, how often it will encounter hazardous environments, and whether or not the equipment actually has to operate in those hazardous environments will determine the level of protection that is required. Of course, it also is determined by the type of hazardous material that will be encountered, whether it's gas or dust, liquids, all that kind of stuff. As a protection company, we look at explosion hazardous areas, of course, but more important to us is an explosion hazardous atmosphere. Okay, if the environment is not ignitable, you don't have to worry about it too much. So it's a big determining factor in the level of protection that we give to industrial equipment. Quite often you will see an accidental release in a non-hazardous area. Unprotected equipment is operated, and the last couple of years we've seen some serious incidents where industrial equipment ignited, accidental releases of flammable materials. Most notorious one being BP Texas City. They had a valve fail, pickup truck sitting next to it. 15 people died, 150 got wounded. I think it cost BP over $2 billion in damage. Could have been prevented, unfortunately. Codes do not require any protection on hazardous areas. Now there's a number of challenges that you face with powered industrial equipment. First and foremost, the equipment is mobile.
So people can use this equipment throughout the plant, whether it's protected or not. So if there's a safe area with unprotected equipment, then it will travel into a hazardous area. Hazardous area classification accuracy. EX protection is extremely expensive, not only for equipment, also for buildings. So people tend to downrate explosion hazardous areas. Makes the building cheaper to develop, to design. People can save some money there. Excessive and conflicting codes and regulations. Between the forklift codes, the building codes, the NFPA, the NEC, American Wiring Association, I don't know who is writing their own codes and regulations in all different areas. We found there's a lot of conflicts and inconsistencies between the code and regulations. Large number of ignition sources. There's 6 or 7 major categories of ignition sources in industrial equipment. Get into the later. Compact equipment design. Technology is getting more advanced. Equipment is getting more advanced, and it's getting more and more compact. It's like looking under the hood of your car. In the old days, you open it up and you could almost climb in there. These days, nothing fits in there. It's just packed. Increasing complexities, it's causing problems for conversions. The risk of human error. Could be either misuse of the equipment or faulty repairs. Again, the high cost of the EX equipment and the EX protection, wear and tear of the equipment can cause issues in ignition sources. And the limited enforceability. Because of this portable equipment, what we've seen quite often is OSHA walks in the front door, or the insurance company walks in the front door, and the equipment is moved into a safe area in the back. Another problem that we are facing is the EPA emission standards. With cleaner burning engines, they run hotter. Hotter means hot surfaces, more hot surfaces. It becomes more and more difficult to get those hot surfaces down to an acceptable level. Look at the next slide. It's a little diagram of a typical chemical facility with an inside-outside storage. Shipping and receiving quite often is regarded as a non-hazardous area due to the ventilation and the doors being open. Storage, usually Division 2 type areas, and then manufacturing usually is Division 1. As you can see, quite often equipment can travel freely. Looking at the excessive codes and regulations, when we're talking about forklift equipment, insurance companies, fire marshals, everybody really looks at the OSHA 1910-178 for industrial equipment. Besides that, there's about 60 even more code and regulations out there that in one way or another get tied into the forklift or material handling equipment, construction codes. The biggest problem with the OSHA 1910-178 is it's a combination of the NCB 56, which is a construction code, and the NFPA 505, which is the fire safety code for industrial equipment. And then there's 20% that they come up with themselves within OSHA. It's a pretty good code as long as people verify the information that's printed in. Unfortunately, OSHA did not. The biggest problem there being the NFPA 505. It's a questionable document. We're actually on the committee do not totally agree with what's going on there. Now, if you look at potential ignition sources on powered industrial equipment, with arcing and sparking components, pretty much anything electrical, could be contacted motor brushes, fuses, light switches, regular light bulbs. Sparks and static buildup. As the equipment moves, you have static buildup on the equipment potentially, especially these days with non-marking fires on industrial equipment. Static buildup is a major risk, and most of us all know that static buildup causes some serious accidents. It's a simple solution, unfortunately not written into the code, and a ground strap. Friction or impact, high-speed impact can cause a spark of forks. A lot of contact points do not have to be non-sparking in most power industrial equipment. Luckily, a lot of companies are now just adding them as a safety measure. Again, codes do not require this. And then friction, wear, tear, brake pads. People don't replace them on time. The friction, steel on steel, can turn very hot. flame that sparks from the exhaust. There are some measures that must be taken for power industrial equipment, internal combustion, that will prevent sparks, backfiring, sparks and flames from backfiring or carbon buildup from leaving the exhaust. There's no special requirements for long-term testing and guaranteeing those emissions down the road. Flame from the air inlet system, same thing, inhalation of flammable materials can lead to backfiring from the air inlet. Hot surfaces, exhaust, manifolds, catalytic converters tend to run at about 4 or 5 Celsius, 500 Celsius. The safety level that we use is about 200 Celsius as a maximum. The NEC says 165 at the surface temperatures for Division 2. Last but not least, engine overspeeding. Engine overspeeding is the inhalation of flammable materials, gases by the engine. Will start drafting, high RPM, will be self-sustainable at that point. You can no longer turn the engine off, but just keep on revving until you have catastrophic failure of the engine or backfiring due to the high level of ignition flammables in the air causing the overspeeding. We had a serious explosion around.
You've actually had cases of that happen?
BP Texas City.
And the same one?
Yes. BP Texas City. There was another hazardous waste company, they had pump trucks that were pumping up hazardous material. Similar situation. It happens quite often, actually. It's one of the more common reasons besides static for diffuse inhalation of flammable materials. If you're looking at the different forklift labels, I don't know how familiar you guys are with different labels out there. If you have electric truck, you have diesel trucks, LP trucks, propane trucks, and gasoline trucks. If they have an ED, LP, or G label, it means there's no protection, no ignition protection whatsoever. ES, DS, LPS, and GS, so-called S-type trucks, they have a limited electrical protection, but no surface temperature restrictions. EE and DY have both electrical restrictions, non-sparking measures, and surface temperature restrictions. International variety, which is actually an EX certified version for use in Division 2 or Zone 222 explosion hazardous areas. Division 1, EX and DX is fully explosion proof, all steel wire conduit. And then you have the International Zone 1, the international counterparts. Now, the next couple slides will go over some of the protection measures used. Go through it briefly. If you're looking at the Zone 1, 21 hazardous material, we use a variety of protection measures, mostly just EX housings, protected wiring, temperature sensors, anti-static controls on electrical trucks. We go to internal combustion, EX starter motors, alternators, water-cooled exhaust manifolds, flame arresters, spark arresters, overspeeding valves, pretty much anything and everything to prevent the non-ignition sources from creating ignition. For Division 2, things become a little bit easier. At least on the electrical ends. Now we can go with a NEMA 4 type housing. Something we recommend, unfortunately, codes and regulations do not necessarily require it. They say it has to be enclosed. Does not really give much of any specification besides a UL description. It's very flexible for interpretation. We're also on the UL board. Question them about why they cannot just name it NEMA 4. Airtight, watertight, gas-tight, everybody knows what you're talking about. They claim that to have heard of me before. Not sure, how to answer something like that. Non-sparking forks, increased safety boxes. The European equivalent of NEMA 4 is increased safety. And for Class 1 or gas and vapors, we recommend the installation of a gas detection system, which is required by international law and code and regulations. It's in the gas detection system will shut down the equipment automatically once ignitable levels of flammable materials are detected. The equipment is protected for immediate contact, but not really for operation in flammable areas. the equipment a heck of a lot safer.
Is that a huge maintenance issue, I would imagine,
But,
those detectors?
no,
Is it built in internally in the equipment? The gas has to come into the equipment for it to be detected? Or is it?
yeah, I mean, I'll get into the gas detection system a little bit later. This technology was developed in 2000, and it's been written into the codes and regulations in Europe a couple of years ago. Now, if you look at power and industrial equipment used in so-called safe areas, okay, in and around facilities that handle flammable materials, could be dock application, could be outside refineries, chemical facilities, where you have bulk storage of flammable materials. Unfortunately, this is the area where most of the big accidents of the last couple of years have happened. There have been accidental release or migration of flammable materials, and the equipment is just not protected that is used in those areas. And on quite a few occasions, industrial equipment was pinpointed at the source for ignition. DSL resources, there was the pump truck application hazardous waste, inhalation, BP Texas City, and the first floor plant, front plant, accidental release, migration to a non-hazardous area, Portec, Spooner, and water resources, drilling application where a pickup truck was driving on site for a long time in the wrong place, saving oil, great drilling setup on fire. Unfortunate, but there's no code and regulations preventing things like that from happening. If you're looking at a risk assessment for industrial equipment, these are some of the criteria that we use. First and foremost, hazardous area classification, what do you encounter and how much. Accessibility of the hazardous area, how easy is it to get into that area with power industrial equipment. Type of hazardous material encountered, the number of equipment ignition sources that have been eliminated. In the international market, it's not really an issue because equipment is tested and certified. According to the use in EX areas, industrial equipment, all the ignition sources are eliminated. Fortunately, US applications allow the use of partially protected industrial equipment, so it needs to be taken into account in the risk assessment. Third-party testing certification. Well known as the NRTL stamp. For powered industrial equipment, NRTL stamps don't always work. For what we do, the conversion of a wide range of different equipment, it does not work. We cannot get an umbrella certification allowing us to convert Model A, Model B, Model C under the same umbrella. It requires separate testing certification and billing for every piece of equipment. Financially not justifiable. Human risk and errors. The risk of human errors. All this equipment is operated by people, and people make mistakes. Unfortunately, it could be somebody trying to make a lunch break, or it could just be not properly being trained for the use of hard industrial equipment. And what prevention methods are taken from keeping in our operating equipment in potentially explosion hazardous atmosphere. Going to some new safety systems. We are working on different things. We are one of the few companies really in the world that continuously develop new methods of protecting industrial equipment. It's a very niche market, it's a very small market. Our goal is to reduce the cost of industrial equipment protection, thereby allowing broader protection of equipment and making equipment safer, yet more cost effective. One system that we developed in 2000 for British Airways, we wanted to protect their 747s in their maintenance hangars, was an equipment integrated gas detection system. They did not want to reclassify their areas, yet they didn't want to burn down the 747s either. They asked for a system that would shut down the equipment automatically in case there was an accidental spill or release. From those early days on, they are now using over 200 other units in other different facilities. Has been written into the code and regulations. It makes a lot of sense that the equipment that is not or partially protected or not designed for use in explosion hazardous atmosphere, you shut it down. You shut it down and eliminate ignition sources. Pretty straightforward approach.
Those detectors are on the perimeter of the hangar or just on your pits or?
No, these detectors get integrated into the equipment. So what they literally have is a portable gas detection system. For our next generation, we're looking into global positioning integration. And, RF terminals, just if you're looking at the big refineries, there's equipment driving around. If there's an alarm going off, signal will be sent to the central location. They will know. It kills the equipment. Yes. They will know exactly where there's a release, where it shouldn't be. They can fully take that measure. So they're shutting down the equipment. You eliminate all arcing and sparking components. You eliminate sparks from the exhaust. You eliminate sparks from static buildup friction. Well, shut along with you pretty much eliminate everything except hot surfaces. You use hot surfaces, but it still takes a little while to cool off. Additional benefits is that you no longer have to worry about doing the arc. The guy that's operating a forklift truck that is going into the wrong area at the wrong time won't blow up the facility because the equipment is shut down. Same thing with the equipment wear and tear and repairs. You don't have to worry about that. People don't maintain the equipment properly, it's shut down, the emission sources are eliminated, or if somebody makes a non-compliant repair, you don't have to worry about it. The equipment is shut down. Now, if you're looking at equipment suitability, there's pretty much three different directions. You got the Ocean and 178, and the NFPA 505. Those two documents use the same tables and suitability criteria. You have the UL 583 and UL 558, which are actually the UL standards and construction specifications for private industrial equipment. And then the Archer Sims. If you're looking at the tables, UL only approves and certifies EX-rated equipment for use in explosion hazardous areas, which means full protection, never low. If you go to OSHA, or the NFPA 505, they offer a whole slew of additional equipment. EX can be used in Division 1. ES, EE, DS, DY, LPS, CNS, and GS, which is equipment that does not have surface temperature restrictions, can be used in Division 2 hazardous areas. Now, the surface temperature restriction is extremely dangerous in dust applications. Paper applications, cotton applications, pretty much anywhere where dust is present. Propane powered equipment in general has been proven to be rather volatile, with a high pressure tank, with a highly flammable material in it, and if people don't close valves or there's a leak in the system, LP trucks tend to blow up and catch fire quite often. We're just doing analysis of that and research. Might be useful to put a gas detection on dust trucks, just to shut them down when there's a leak. Now, if you're looking at the industrial equipment allowed in industrial hazard and explosion hazardous areas, you do the gap analysis. I won't go over all of them. I think I mentioned most of them already. Surface temperatures are an issue. Sparks from impact are an issue that are not covered. You're not required to use junction boxes on the Division 2 type equipment. Wires can just be plugged in with a chew over it and that's regarded as safe. We don't really believe in that. Those things can get loose, even though there's no access from operation, vibration. Luckily, it doesn't happen that often, but theoretically, you compare it to all the other tests that OSHA that you'll make you go through. It's one of the big surprises. Then determining the suitability of the equipment. If you're ever in a position where you need to determine suitability of the equipment, really look at the label. Manufacturers will not put a hazardous area label on Division 2 allowed equipment. Why? Because they know it's not tested, certified. They don't want the liability. You talk to UL, you ask them, well, if you believe it's suitable, why don't you put the label on? They will not put the label on. They push it back on the authority having jurisdiction, which is the owner's engineering judgment or the insurance company. That's an interesting situation there. Another thing you can look at quickly, look for non-sparking forks. Brass or stainless steel plated forks. It doesn't have that, it's probably not suitable. Check for the conductive tires. There's white tires in the truck, It's probably not rounded to the floor. Big risk of static buildup, and you gotta make sure that there's a ground strap on it. Lock battery connectors. Every EX rated truck needs to have lock battery connectors. Let's see, you can ask for a copy of the testing laboratory or manufacturer's certificate of compliance. Again, if it doesn't say hazardous area rating on it, it's probably not suitable for the area. Last but not least, when the low lights are taking infrared detector or a thermometer, when you shoot the exhaust, you will find and measure that as far above the 175 allowed, or as we allowed at 200 Celsius. Want to know more about industrial equipment protection? Now you can contact us. You go to our website. Try and be as informative as we can about this particular subject. Any questions?
I have a question. Does your company offer any suppression type equipment, or is it mainly detection?
Suppression is in
Fire suppression for this equipment, or?
strictly detection and shutdown. If the thing does catch fire, that's it.
Do you do anything with the International Guard?
Not yet. We are talking to actually the Air Force about the gas detection system, where they're now looking at alternate EX-rated equipment for those occasional flammable pellets.
Designing the hangar up in Belize right now, that they're gonna put in a fully loaded F-16 fighter in the reserve lodge with a full tank of gas.
Yeah.
A full set, I think so.
So, quite often,
That does me.
yeah. I mean, it's just, we are fairly new to the US market with this system. Only got a certification, US certification at the end of last year. So we are just trying to educate, get people on the same page, work with code regulations, talk to people that want to protect their investments. Any other questions?
So essentially what you're doing is you're taking a piece of equipment and trying to eliminate any kind of an explosion source, any kind of a hot surface. How do people even begin to get into that? I mean, we're all looking at fixed fire protection, what we do for a living.
Yes.
Those guys, when we're talking gas detection, we're talking about gas detection that's fixed.
Yes.
I can see the global positioning being a very interesting form of not allowing equipment that's not protection proof into a certain area, explosive area. I think that has tremendous potential. But it seems to me that you're also inviting an enormous amount of maintenance work here. All this stuff has got to, first of all, you've got to install it, but then somebody's got to maintain this.
Our gas detection system is a self-calibrating system. There's only two real maintenance. One is the gas sensing head. If it fails or it goes defective, it can no longer operate the equipment. And there's a calibration gas bottle. Just all on the
But
equipment.
it's not working.
Yeah, that is the equipment is, I mean, if the gas sensor is not working, the equipment is involved. Is there a way to bypass it? Well, of course, because testing laboratories like bypasses. So we have to build in a bypass. But it's a pretty straightforward, proven system. So all you need to add is the gas protection and the calibration gas.
Now, what other equipment do you have besides forklifts?
We put it on everything. We put it on big crane, golf carts, pallet trucks, generator sets.
You're talking about somebody driving a pickup truck past the,
Yep.
through a
Yep.
gas plant?
In the Middle East, in the refineries, anything that goes on site, even in the UK, they now have different refineries. Any piece of power industrial equipment that goes on site has to have a minimal protection for gas detection.
And then
Whether
those
it's
pickup trucks?
pickup trucks, big cranes, construction cranes, school buses, transportation buses for personnel. There's different refineries in the US now that we're talking to that are evaluating the allowed equipment on site and the level of protection required on the people that's still allowed. And they're really clearing out the refineries of unwanted vehicles.
Now, when you're talking about this consulting, is that a consulting business as in,
In-
you charge for going in and actually going through an entire refinery and identifying all the hazardous equipment, the hazardous areas?
In Europe, we do it large scale. A lot of major facilities where we go into their facilities, we identify the hazards, we identify the risks. One funny thing, a lot of facilities are doing, they're condensing all the flammable materials in certain applications, because they feel it's safer. Where we have the philosophy that, you know, if you are a cosmetic manufacturer with aerosols or alcohol, or even a Walgreens distribution center, you want to spread the flammable materials throughout the facility to reduce the risk. If there's a fire, if you have an incident with one of the pallets, you don't have it surrounded by flammable materials causing it to go out of control. So from the risk and accident management standpoint, we kind of go to a low protection level on the equipment, but in most cases, in overseas, these days, gas protection and spread the material.
And we're more talking about a 4-hour radius firewall and all the flammable stuff inside,
Yeah,
with a heavy dose of
That-
fixed fire protection.
that's the right way to do it. Unfortunately, a lot of facilities don't want to spend that kind of money.
Okay.
None of them do it.
And you know, you really see a trend that whatever people can do to get away from it, they get away from it. Until it goes wrong. Then depending on the company, they will fix it or
They're out of business.
they're out of business. And that's one of the surprising things we, as a protection company, have noticed in the U.S. There's a lot of companies out there with the philosophy it hasn't happened to us in 20, 30, 40 years. Our response then is, then I guess your number is up soon. You know, it doesn't matter to us. Once we protect the equipment, we know the right thing will never cause an incident. If you don't feel there's value in that, then you can blow up your facility without our equipment in it, which is better for us anyway.
If you would, I would imagine, just take, let's say, equipment that's already there in the facility, and you will then equip that with your stuff.
Depends.
The owner already owns the forklift, so you're gonna go in and protect that forklift, or is you have to buy a new
It
one?
kind of depends on what level of protection they want. If they want a full conversion, we will only do a full conversion on new equipment.
New equipment.
If it is existing equipment, we can add a gas detection system, we can do some minor modifications with components to reduce ignition sources, but to fully convert it and make it fully explosion-proof, we will only do it on new equipment.
And I would just imagine there's gonna be limitless models and types of equipment and pieces of stuff that you need to do this.
That's-
Where's the limit? I mean, do you basically say, okay,
the-
this manufacturer forklift, we make a kit for this one, we make a kit for that one, we make a kit for that one?
It's all custom built, the limit is what the customer's willing to pay.
And what kind of money are we talking about here?
Zone 1, full conversion on diesel truck, you know, $70,000,
More than a truck?
more than,
The truck?
oh yeah, about 2 or 3 times the price of the truck. That's,
Ouch.
that's the price for explosion proof.
This is to get into the truck?
I'd be real excited.
But that's for class 1 to 1 type equipment, you go to level down. I mean, if you really look, an EX truck in the US costs between $80,000 and $100,000. An EX rated forklift truck.
And Word truck, oh, for...
OEM truck. If you go to the next level down, you go OEM LTS type truck, which is a lot of explosion management areas, it's $2,500 premium. So you're going from probably an $80,000 premium to a $2,500 premium.
Which one are they gonna buy?
And you get what you pay for. And if you buy the $2,500 version and stretch it.
Now, so what do they use in these, because you were talking about ethanol plants?
Probably nothing, just LP trucks, LPS trucks.
Nobody protects them at all? You're just hoping that there's no...
Ethanol is one of the industries, you know, after the refineries are finally learning the lesson now. That's some major incidents. From what we've seen with power industrial equipment, ethanols are the next one due for a range of major incidents. And ethanol is most of you know, it's nasty stuff. You can't throw water on it, it makes it worse. Highly flammable, burns clear. It's going to be interesting. And yeah, it's waiting to happen.
guys found any success selling to the forklift manufacturers?
Forklift manufacturers don't really, are not too excited about the equipment.
Guess not.
Because we point out their flaws. Well, you gotta look at it, the forklift manufacturers manufacture according to the code. They don't claim suitability. Nobody can sue UL, you know? UL will say, well, it's not suitable for hazardous areas. When you go to the NFPA 505 committee, they claim suitability based on historic fact and point to the authority having jurisdiction to make the final call. Authority having jurisdiction, it's the fire marshal of the insurance company in most cases. Insurance companies putting their money on the line, so everybody's hiding behind the insurance company. And the insurance company is looking at the OSHA 1910-178, which says this equipment is suitable, without looking at the real protection and elimination of emission sources. So where are we now? People get overbilled for insurance premiums because they're allowed to use insufficiently protected equipment, or companies are self-insured like BP and they have $2 billion in the bank to spend on things like this. It's kind of an interesting industry and situation that we are facing.
Where does Factor Mutual come down? I mean, seeing that they're using their own money to insure, it would be a little more strict.
Factory Mutual has to abide by the code and regulations. They look at OSHA 1910-178.
They usually go beyond regulation to protect themselves.
Not in industrial equipment.
Not in any way.
What we've seen is a lot of insurance companies have a tough time forcing EX equipment upon somebody, even though in certain situations they will. The authority having jurisdiction could be the engineering, or the owner's engineering judgment. So they'll use their engineering judgment and say it's suitable. It's quite interesting all the different code regulations people grab and to reduce costs in this type of equipment and facilities in general. The latest thing we have faced is a major paint manufacturer that wants to use, what is it, UL 497, I believe, which is in the paint building code, that states that storage, high-density storage of flammable materials, as long as it's enclosed, is a non-hazardous area. And they want to use that code now to downgrade all their facilities. The warehousing distribution.
The flammable material is
Enclosed
non-hazardous.
in-
It's enclosed, it's in a container.
Because it's in closed containers, it's non-hazardous. The risk of incidents and puncturing is so limited that it doesn't classify as a hazardous area. Now, again, we have our own thoughts about that.
That makes no sense.
And I empower them to put it through, and I hope they have good insurance.
Well, this is basically, I mean, we've had presentations here specifically about forklift, tank. The guy goes for lunch, puts it on the brake, comes back from lunch, forgets to take the brake off. The next thing you know, it blows up the tank. So I mean, your combustible stuff that's in containers is going to go sky high at that point. It makes it, doesn't seem.
Well, I mean, you see a lot of incidents, I mean, you have a forklift truck, you got this big steel thing sticking out to lift up the load. If it's at the wrong height, you will puncture a drum. You go
Sure.
full speed, and you got a major spill. Now, if you have a limited protection, you might be okay. Under 50-50 chance that it might have run out of time. If you have unprotected equipment, you got about a 99.9% chance that a forklift truck will ignite the fire. If you have a gas detection system on that forklift truck, more than likely you have a 90% chance that nothing will happen, depending on the equipment. If it's electric, looking at 95%, equipment is shut down, there's no emission sources. You don't have to worry about it. Now you have an alarm, you know, if there's trucks in the environment or in the area around even the next stop, you don't have to worry about the spill because those trucks will probably shut down too.
What's the typical gas detection cost per vehicle?
Our list price on the gas station is $8,000.
That's better than making it explode.
It's a heck of a lot better than that. It's an 80-20 rule. You know, the gas detection price, it's very similar, but if you get a fixed multi-gas detection system and add calibration system to it, you're looking at a similar price on the market.
Where does it typically sample the gas?
We put the gas sensing head in the engine housing, which is where all the ignition sources are. Usually you have a good airflow in the engine housing to keep the engines cool.
Is it an active detector?
Yes, it's a real-time detection.
So that's an aspirator on it?
An aspirator.
How does it?
It's a pellet-based system,
Okay.
so it's just gas sensing and open to the atmosphere.
And it operates in milliseconds, I think?
Yeah, we've done some tests with it. You know, it's the moment it detects it, shuts everything down. There's other concerns, of course, when people are driving equipment when they're on full speed and they run into an atmosphere. Yes, they will have a bigger spill on their hands. This thing will freeze up the equipment immediately. Our philosophy is it's the better of two evils. You know, it's better to have the equipment freeze up than burn the operator down. As I said, I mean, we're really trying to be out there, educate people about what's going on, about disclosure regulations. We are also active members on these committees, but since everybody's pointing the fingers back to the authority having jurisdiction, so the people that specify this stuff and insure this stuff, making an effort within the SFD to really educate the insurance industry on what they're insuring.
I can't imagine that the fire marshal would really want to make a decision on that.
Usually the fire marshal can pass it on to the insurance company too. And you gotta keep in mind, it's mobile equipment. The moment the fire marshal comes in, the equipment is probably in the safe area. You look at some OSHA reports, and some citations, quite a few OSHA citations state the use of improperly protected, insufficiently protected equipment in the wrong areas. That's what happened in Savannah River. They got cited for helping power trucks. I think inside their building. The termination was, I think, a loose bucket and metal impact. There was the initial spark there, so they still have a forklift trucks in there on that.
Sounds like an uphill battle.
It is,
In a way.
we have a feeling we're doing the right thing. It helps.
Are there any more questions? Anybody else? Anything? No? I'd say, well, thank you very much for coming out. Thank you very much.